In June 2007, a Western Australian government minister stood up and announced that a town had been officially removed from existence. Not demolished, not closed, removed. The town's name came off the maps. The road signs pointing to it were taken down and replaced with danger warnings. The name disappeared from GPS databases. Government services had already been cut years earlier. What remained was a place Australia decided it would be simpler to pretend was not there than to deal with what had been done inside it. The town was called Wittenoom. 3 million tonnes of the most dangerous form of asbestos ever mined in this country are still sitting in the gorge it was built around. The Banjima people, whose country this has always been, cannot safely return to tend it. And in February 2026, their native title corporation filed a $1.5 billion claim in the federal court against the Western Australian government for failing to clean it up for 60 years. This story is not over. It has barely been acknowledged. This is The Strange Country. Subscribe now if you want more of the Australian history that never made it into the official version. Ngambaguna. Long before any mining company arrived in the Pilbara, this country had a name. The Banjima people called it Ngambaguna. They had lived in and tended the gorges, plains and waterways of this region for thousands of years, maintaining the land through cultural obligations that tied them specifically to these places rather than to the country in general. The gorges that would eventually be mined were not simply scenic features. They were places of ceremony, law, and deep cultural significance to multiple language groups, including the Banjima, Guruma, Yinji Bandi, Ngaluma, Yinhawangka, Nyapali, and Palaku peoples. In 1936, blue asbestos deposits were identified in the area. By 1943, a mining operation was underway, run by the Colonial Sugar Refining Company through a subsidiary called Australian Blue Asbestos Limited, with mining magnate Lang Hancock, father of Gina Reinhardt, involved in the early development of the site. The Western Australian Government funded the construction of housing under a Commonwealth State housing agreement. A town was built. People came from 52 different migrant groups to work there. At its peak, several thousand people lived in Wittenoom, with schools, churches, dances, and a functioning community built around the most dangerous industrial site in Australian history. The streets were paved with asbestos tailings. The waste product of milling blue asbestos was used as road fill, as playground surface, as general infill around the town. Children played in it. Workers came home from shifts covered in blue dust and sat at the dinner table. Nobody told them what they were breathing. Crocidolite, the blue asbestos mined at Wittenoom, is the most dangerous form of asbestos that exists. A single fibre inhaled into lung tissue can, decades later, cause mesothelioma, an aggressive and uniformly fatal cancer, with an average life expectancy from diagnosis of 9 months. The latency period between exposure and disease can stretch to 50 years. People who breathed Wittenoom's air in the 1950s were still dying from it in the 2000s. The danger was not unknown to everyone at the time. A small number of doctors in the Western Australian Public Health Department, including Dr. Eric Saint and Dr. Jim McNulty, understood the health risks and said so. Their concerns went largely unheeded by mine management and the state government. Internal company documents later revealed that CSR executives were aware of the health risks while operations continued. The mine closed in December 1966. The stated reason was economics. The mine was no longer profitable. To the very end, the health risk was not the primary factor in that decision. More than 4,000 deaths across Australia have been attributed to asbestos exposure at Wittenoom, according to the Asbestos Diseases Society of Australia. At least 1,200 of those were former workers and residents specifically tracked by the University of Western Australia's Occupational Respiratory Epidemiology Group. The actual toll is likely higher because many migrant workers returned overseas and were never counted in Australian records. Western Australia has one of the highest rates of mesothelioma in the world, proportionate to population, largely because of Wittenoom. The Banjima people have the highest per capita mesothelioma rate of any group on Earth. Many of them never worked in the mines. They simply lived on and visited their country, walking over tailings and breathing air in the gorges the same way their ancestors had for thousands of years. Banjima woman Jonelle Parker told ABC News that there is not one Banjima family that has not been touched by mesothelioma. Her uncle, Banjima elder Maitland Parker, born on Mulga Downs Station just north of Wittenoom, served as a ranger in the adjacent Karijini National Park. He was diagnosed with mesothelioma in 2016 and died in January 2024. He never worked in the mines. The legal record. CSR fought asbestos claims for decades. The company denied responsibility and challenged victims in court repeatedly. In 1988, a court ruled in favour of former worker Klaus Rabenold, awarding damages and condemning what the court described as CSR's conscious and contemptuous disregard for worker safety. By 2006, CSR had paid the modern equivalent of approximately 645 million Australian dollars in damages across multiple cases. The money did not clean the land. 3 million tonnes of asbestos tailings remain in Wittenoom Gorge, uncovered, unsecured, spreading. The Western Australian Government's own reporting confirms the contamination is not stable. Asbestos waste material is seeping into surrounding waterways that flow through Karijini National Park, one of the state's major tourist destinations. The exclusion zone covering Banjima native title land is 46,000 hectares, 8 times the size of Sydney Harbour. It is classified as the largest asbestos contaminated site in the Southern Hemisphere. In 1985, a government-commissioned report estimated the cleanup would cost at least $22 million and recommended it proceed. No action was taken. In 1992, a parliamentary inquiry recommended the tailings be cleaned up over a 5 to 10 year period. The Cabinet rejected the recommendation. In 2006, a state government report found up to 200 Banjima people were continuing to use the gorges for ceremonies, activities the report classified as high to extreme risk. No cleanup followed. In 2023, the remaining buildings in Wittenoom were demolished. The asbestos tailings were left where they were. The town that still exists. The erasure of Wittenoom from official maps in 2007 did not erase the contamination. It erased the government's most visible acknowledgement that the contamination existed. What remained after dégazettement was not a cleaned site, it was a cleaned record. The name came off the maps. The tailings stayed in the gorge. The Banjima people stayed unable to safely access country they have held native title over since a federal court determination in 2014. In February 2026, the Banjima Native Title Aboriginal Corporation filed a $1.5 billion claim in the federal court in Melbourne against the Western Australian government. The claim seeks mine remediation. It argues the government has owned and controlled the contaminated land since 1979 and has had both the means and the obligation to clean it up for nearly 50 years. The WA Premier acknowledged the claim was not surprising. He said he would prefer a negotiated outcome. The BNTAC Chief Executive said previous discussions with the government had failed to progress. Wittenoom does not appear on Australian maps. The road signs that once pointed to it are gone. What remains is 3 million tonnes of spreading asbestos waste, a death toll that is still climbing, a community of traditional owners who cannot safely tend their own country, and a $1.5 billion legal claim that will determine whether 60 years of inaction by a state government constitutes something that the legal system is finally prepared to name. This is Australia's most toxic site. It officially does not exist. Those two things have been true at the same time for 18 years. Subscribe for more of the Australian stories that the official version left out, and let us know in the comments if you had ever heard of Wittenoom before today.